Hi, I'm Phil Kurz, contributing editor at TVTech Magazine and TVTech.com. We're here to talk about all things color with one of the first vendors to help broadcasters and production companies meet the new demands of high dynamic range and its wider color gamut a few years back when HDR became a reality. I'm speaking of none other than AJA Video. I'm joined today by Tim Walker, a senior product manager at the company. Tim, thanks for being here.
Hey, Phil, it's great to be here.
It's great. Let's get started. Why is color management important, and what factors must be considered if you're going to set up an effective color management scheme?
Well, I think color management is so important because if you get it wrong, it just looks wrong to the viewer at home. And if it looks wrong to the viewer at home, sometimes people can get frustrated and change the channel. So it's really important to keep control over your color throughout the entire production chain from camera capturing all the way through delivery at the home. And so, color management itself is really defined as understanding the capabilities of all the different pieces of equipment that are touching that video in the production chain. And it's understanding the capabilities of the equipment from, what types of dynamic range do they support? What type of color gamuts and color spaces do they support? Are we dealing with camera log inputs or outputs from the camera? And what are the display targets that we're really trying to hit at the end? And then understanding really what it takes to get from A to B, to get from the camera to the home. And it may involve different types of conversion along the way or color management settings within the different tools that are touching the video along the way. So it's a pretty complicated field when you break it down into all of its little elements, but it's also extremely important to keep track of for those reasons I mentioned. Hate to have things looking washed out at home or transitions between two sources and having them not flow well together. So color management's become a really important topic these days, especially with the advent of HDR, which I believe we'll talk about in a little bit.
Sure. Well, before we get there, let's talk about what a lookup table is or a LUT. What is its role and how does it play into color management?
Yeah, so there's really different kinds of LUTs. There's technical LUTs and there's creative LUTs, and there's 1D LUTs and there's 3D LUTs. So they're used all over the place. And a LUT is a lookup table, and in its simplest form, you put a value in and you get a different value out. And without going too much deeper into it, that's in essence what a 1D LUT is, and a 3D LUT is a variant of that. You put in RG and B code values and you get out different RG and B code values. But then there's some interpolation which goes on to try to get you a more accurate representation of what that color should be at the output of the transform. But like I said, there's technical LUTs, which would simply take you from one color gamut to another. And there's also creative LUTs, which allow you to have a certain look applied to a video signal, whether it be, in an on-set application or maybe even in a live production application. So let's really have places that they're used in all different kinds of applications.
It seems like color management may have gotten more complicated with the emergence of high dynamic range and its larger color gamut because we still have a large standard dynamic range audience out there. What strategies have proven effective when producing for a mixed audience of SDR and HDR viewers?
Yeah, well, there's with the advent of HDR comes a couple of different things. One, you're now really working in 10-bit video, and you're also working with a different color space, which is the BT 2020 or Rec 2020 color space. When a lot of people have been working in Rec 709 for a number of years. And now you've also got different types of curves that are used for HDR, whether it's hybrid log gamma or PQ, the perceptual quantizer. And then oftentimes for delivery to the home, it could be Dolby Vision on the way to the home. So all those things now need to be more considered and handled carefully through the production chain. You'd hate to mix and match a 709 signal with a 2020 signal. It just doesn't look right. And so you got to be really careful and use different conversion methodologies to go between those formats depending on what your deliverable is and what your audience is. And so um, there's this notion in live production of a single master or single stream workflow, which means that we're converting all of the different sources in the production into a common production format for the production switcher to process the video in. And then you'd have different conversion tools on the output of that to deliver it into your different SDR 709, PQ 2020, what have you, different formats. So, the advent of HDR has really brought this notion of color management to the foreground to ensure that this HDR workflow happens and provides that value to the people watching it in HDR, but is also being delivered in SDR to the larger viewing audience, especially in live production. I'm speaking about now, in a proper way.
So why don't you talk a little bit about color monitoring and analysis in these environments?
Yeah, so when you're monitoring color in these environments, again, you're working with these multiple different color spaces and gamut. So it's helpful to have different image analysis tools, some of which I've got shown up behind me. Having a good waveform monitor and having a good vector scope, making sure you're exposing the cameras correctly and cameras are matched even before production. They got to be matched correctly. Um, so you want to have the ability to monitor the signal as you're setting them up and making sure that uh, all the greens are matching across all the cameras for one. If you're shooting a sports event, for example, maybe you're white balancing as well. And some of those camera correction techniques can actually be either applied in camera, or we've got, even in our color box product, the ability to load in a 3x3 matrix and 1D LUTs, which can also be used to more effectively do camera matching. We're trying to make one camera look like another. And so we've got different tools within some of our products to assist people in doing that. But being able to, monitor all along the way from setup to actual during production and then through delivery, it's important to know where your colors are, um, in making sure you're not overexposing things and blowing out the picture, or even underexposing, for example, as well, because that can be equally as bad. So having effective monitoring and analysis tools along the way are really helpful.
You mentioned the AGA color box. So what's the latest with the latest version? I believe is version 2.1.
Yeah. Yeah, so the AJA Color Box is our latest color conversion device. It's a single channel color conversion device. You can fit 4 of these in one rack unit, so you can do 4 UHD or 4K color transforms in one RU. And it's really a lot more than color transforms. This box is built on a very robust and powerful color processing pipeline. At its core, it does have a 3D LUT, but it's surrounded by 2 1D LUTs, 2 3x3 matrices, and an additional 2 1D LUTs. So it gives you tremendous control over the things that we've been talking about here in terms of managing color spaces, converting between color spaces and doing transforms from SDR to HDR, as well as color matching cameras. It also has several other color processing pipelines built into it. So it's got color front engine, it's got the BBC HLG LUTs, the NBCU LUTs. It also has something new called Orion Convert, which even does some higher precision color transforms. And these are mostly all targeted for live production. And so we introduced it a couple years ago, and we've been continuing to build on it, releasing more and more features for it. And some of the latest features we released was in version 2.1, where we introduced the ability to do 4K or UHD down conversion. So maybe your camera's coming in 4K and you're doing some processing, but you need to down convert it to HD. You can now do that inside of the color box. And all while maintaining its ultra low latency that it's known for. So without the down conversion for live production, latency is everything, and we're able to do our color transforms and color correction in less than half of a video line. And when we do our down conversion, we're just adding one more line to it, so it's still really low latency. Um, that's the big thing. We've also done some other things where we've added an ACES pipeline, which is important for filmmakers in their on-set color management and color workflows. So we added the support to be able to load in an AMF file, which is an ACES metadata file, which is essentially a recipe for a color transform that uses ACES color space for its working color space. And so we've introduced the ability to load those AMFs directly into the color box and simplify color management in that way. We've also done some things to support Ari's Alexa 35 camera. So that's their latest camera that's got this massive dynamic range. And there's some wireless transmitters and receivers that struggle to handle it. And so the camera can actually encode its signal differently, and the color box can decode it prior to color processing. So helping out the RE users out there. So we've done a lot to expand the capabilities of that product in this latest release, and we're continuing to build on it. So keep your eyes and ears open.
So, Tim, I was wondering if you could very briefly describe color management workflows that have proven successful when it comes to live production and episodic production.
Sure. Yeah. Just kind of going back to that single stream HDR workflow is really the one that's been proven out so far for live production, and that's really kind of these days still protecting the SDR. And I'm really looking forward to the days where we transition to actually like letting HDR do its full blown thing. But talking a little bit about episodic, what not everybody has the time or the budget for this, but what seems to work really well is when you can have a director of photography, a cinematographer working with a director and understanding the types of looks that they are trying to achieve for a show. So some people have a look book, which is really helpful in communicating with each other what they're going after. And then really sitting down with the colorist and defining that look of what you're trying to achieve for the show. And it may be, this look that we talk about, it's supposed to evoke an emotion, to help tell the story of the production. And colorists really understand how to, move the color wheels to do that. And they can develop the LUTs that are then necessary to be taken into production, where they can be applied on set, where the director and cinematographer can actually see, what their finished product could look like. And it's that then look which gets moved into doing dailies and then further into post-production to give editors an idea about what everybody saw on set that they like so much to try to work it into the final product. So those are two real effective workflows that we've seen have great success in the world of HDR production for both live and also for for on-set.
Well, that's all we have time for today. I want to thank our color expert, Tim Walker, and you for being here. Be sure to check out TVTech and TVTech.com to stay up to date on the latest important technology developments affecting the industry. I'm Phil Kurz. Goodbye.